Last week, 60 Minutes did a segment purporting to look into the real reasons behind the Great Resignation. So now the Great Resignation, of course, is where millions of Americans have quit their jobs, their low-wage jobs, places like the service sector. And so now 60 Minutes, they talked about this, but instead of asking regular workers why they have decided to quit their jobs, they instead decided to ask CEOs.
We do have openings, and we do need more employees.
Carl Sobocinski owns several restaurants in Greenville, South Carolina. He needs workers both in the kitchen and out front waiting tables.
What's the biggest challenge in attracting them and keeping the employees?
It's a problem that they're just not out there. Where we are, we just don't have the workers out there looking for the jobs.
You're finding it more difficult to find people right now?
Absolutely.
Across the board?
Across the board.
James Jordan owns a fast-growing construction company in Greenville.
We doubled our revenue year over year. We don't have a work problem at all. Now it's just a matter of finding the individuals to be able to perform the work.
So it's not a work problem, it's a worker problem.
It's a worker problem.
We're still missing a few million women, by the way, in the workforce. We're not fully there. Still missing a few million women, but we're seeing them come back. And predominantly the women that we're missing are parents of young children. They were hit the hardest.
I wonder why. I wonder what hit them. Oh, right, yeah, coronavirus. So now look, the people that you heard from are Karen Kimbrough, who is a chief economist of LinkedIn and a former Federal Reserve employee. Carl Sobocinski, of course, owns multiple restaurants in the South Carolina area, and James Jordan is the owner of a Greenville construction company, again in South Carolina. So now, interesting. One person who worked at the Federal Reserve and two business owners. Interesting. Actually, 4 out of the 5 people that were interviewed for this story were, well, again, they're not regular workers, they're owners, they're bosses. And then I don't think you had anybody there who actually worked in the service sector. Not at all. Not at all. And so I guess unless you count the restaurant owner who actually is in the field but then owns the restaurant. But again, you've heard their answers. Oh, it's a worker problem. Labor shortage. Labor shortage. Okay, well, but here's the thing. It's not. It's not a labor shortage. Now, the construction guy, James Jordan, said, hey, look, we're doing great. We doubled our revenue, but we just got to find workers. Well, now, if I were there, I was going to say, if I were a reporter, a real reporter, I would ask them, okay, did you increase their pay? Did you make a bigger offer for better pay, better benefits, to try to lure people in, employees? Now, I asked that because obviously 60 Minutes didn't. They didn't ask him about that. I watched the whole video. You can watch it too. And you can see, and by the way, to be fair, some of them do address that, oh yeah, pay of course, workers of course want a little bit more pay. It's some of their demand. But then they go to say, but really people are asking for flexibility. That's what they really want. Flexibility. Well, no, it's not just flexibility. They want all these things. Better pay, benefits, and of course to not have to go into the office if they don't have to. But there are of course jobs, these service jobs, the ones that the people are leaving, that you can't just make into you can't make burgers. You can't waitress or wait a table over Zoom. So obviously the whole conversation that they had about flexibility made no sense. Unless, of course, you're talking about scheduling, which again, if you're working in the service industry, normally you do have a pretty varied schedule, which again can work if you're in school, whatever, and got to work around that. But then there are a lot of workers that say that my schedule is insane and it jumps around and it's in, we get hit with sudden hours, sudden rush, things like that, where we have to come in, where even we might have had, things that were pre-planned. Well, now we have to drop to get into work. And so that's the difficulty here. But now there's other difficulties here. See, when I was talking about wages, I think it's really important to point out the wages in, for example, South Carolina, right? The construction company. So now the median wage for a construction laborer is about $12 an hour. So now, if you're only offering $12 an hour or less, by the way, you're not going to get that many applicants for your job. So maybe, I don't know, you could raise your wages a little bit. See if that works. Now, the kitchen and wait staff for the restaurant, now, oh man, we're hurting for people. We got to find people to fill our wait staff in our kitchens. All right, well, those people they only earn about $2.13 an hour plus tips in South Carolina, and in many places all over the country, which has a tipped minimum wage. I don't know. Maybe you should pay them more. I mean, it just seems like it's the most obvious conclusion that you could come to. Now, as far as women are concerned, in which Karen Kimbrough addresses, we're missing about 2 million women out of the workforce. It turns out they've got kids. Gee, maybe that's because of the lack of affordable childcare. Or maybe, and of course, you also have COVID. You have COVID. A lot of people are not comfortable going back to work because there's still a pandemic. But generally, look, it's like, perhaps if we had better pay and benefits, then people would do those jobs. And I think that's fairly well known, but not by people apparently in corporate media or the owners of these businesses. But there's more. I actually have more in this video. They're going to speculate again about more of the reasons that people are just choosing not to work at their establishments.
A lot of people are just opting because of affordable housing costs to choose more affordable places. Smaller cities, they give you more space, will feel safer. And people are willing to try something new.
Many people believe that generous government stimulus and unemployment benefits are really what's keeping so many workers on the sidelines, no matter where they live.
The quick answer people say is we're still providing too many benefits and too many people can sit at home and get a check. I personally disagree with that. Our associates that didn't come back, they're not sitting at home. They found other careers, other opportunities that fit their lifestyle better.
That it's not just a function of the benefits. That's not the only thing that's going on in the heads of workers when they make that calculus about, should I go back, will I go back, and for what job? There are just thousands upon thousands of available jobs in America right now. And companies are eager to hire. But workers are being very choosy.
Workers, they're just, it's the workers. It's all the workers' fault. They're just being so choosy. And it's because they want these magical things like, they want to travel, and they want to try something new, go to a new place that's a little cheaper. And the old jobs, it just turns out those old jobs, they didn't fit their lifestyle anymore. They wanted more flexibility. Wow. No, they don't get it. They just don't get it. Again, why did you not ask the people who are working in these industries or who were working in these industries and said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Oh, it's maybe because they would actually tell you the real reasons and not bullshit like, I just wanted to move from San Francisco to to buy a nice house in South Carolina, because I can definitely afford to pick up and move when I'm working at Starbucks. My God, man. Oh, it hurts. And again, you want to talk about people in San Francisco, right? Well, it turns out that you have a lot of renters in San Francisco that have to move in with like 3 or 4 people to share an apartment just to be able to afford the rent. And of course, you have massive housing bubbles that are happening in a lot of the major cities. And now apparently are happening in other places. You have foreign investors that are coming in and snapping up all the available housing that's limiting the supply and making it. And of course, they go and they decide they want to rent those places out. Huh? Very strange. And so again, that leads to the massive gentrification in the cities that are pricing out these very same low-wage workers that were deemed essential. Remember that? They were called essential earlier in the pandemic. And then as soon as, well, I guess it didn't take very long, but they forgot completely about these workers. They just forgot about them. Hey, you're so essential. Now get back to work. Yeah. So now there's pushback to this. A lot of people not happy about this segment. A lot of you are also not happy about this segment because it was just incredibly lazy and just completely out of touch. I'm not saying any of the people in the video are bad people specifically. I'm just saying that it was a terrible segment and that it was just not representative of the real issues facing workers in this country. Some of the workers actually were posting about this on the Reddit community r/anti-work. Let me read you a couple of the responses here. This is from user Rick's Toys. And so let me bring that up here. I watched it and knew going into it, it was going to miss so much truth. I mean, they hit a few problems, but missed so many more. They clearly interviewed the wrong people. As usual, they might think they know, but none of them live it. Where are the struggling 20-year-olds, the older 50-year-olds trying to find work, and why they are giving up? Not a single word about people needing more money to live. Not a single solution as to why it's so hard to apply. The wage disparity between the worker against the CEO never asked a single real person why they quit. It's good to see them talking about it, but they really didn't break any new ground. They could read this sub and find the answers in a couple of days. I would say probably in about 10 minutes. Because that's essentially what the community is saying. They're laying out the very real problems, and they're right. I mean, and here's the thing. We've all heard the anecdotal stories about people that were, putting in tons and tons of applications, places that were like, oh my God, we need workers. Labor shortage, we need help. Help wanted, please apply. 60 different applications one person had put in to all these different places. Not one callback. Not one. I thought you were desperate for workers. What's going on? Now, by the way, these places, by the way, are represented by these trade and industry groups, these lobbying groups that push politicians on both sides of the aisle, by the way, Democrats and Republicans, to end pandemic benefits, to not do stimulus checks or any more of them, and not do any more unemployment benefits. Gee, I wonder why. We've got more. We've got another quote here, which is pretty good. Work me, baby, one more time. Nice handle. I love it. Added, they didn't mention that while productivity and costs have been going up for years, wages have stagnated. Unions have nearly disappeared, and bosses acting like monsters has become routine. Total whitewash job. Yeah, and of course, they also didn't mention how horrible customers were, especially during the pandemic. coughing in people's faces. How many videos have we shown on the show? And how many videos are out there showing the Karens that would come into the restaurants and either rip their mask off or other people's masks off, cough in their face, throw a fit, whatever. Assault employees or scream in their face because of a mask mandate or a mask rule? I mean, y'all don't get paid enough to deal with that. And they don't. They don't. But so now here's the other thing. You know the inflation that it's actually at a whopping 6.8% annually? Corporate pundits and, they've been screaming about this for months. 4 months. And they blame that inflation on, well, the government's been spending too much money. Well, and I mean, by government spending too much money, you mean they've been spending too much money on you. Not corporations, not the military, not the oil subsidies. No, it's because the government spent too much money on your $1,400 stimmy checks. That's why we have inflation. That's why you pay more. It's your fault. You did it, workers. It's your fault, not our fault. No, it turns out, of course, that's all bullshit too. See, the whole thing, by the way, is according to an excellent write-up by Matt Stoller. So now he used economic data from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, and he looked at how much of inflation is not being driven by supply chain issues or government spending. So again, does that play a role? Well, yeah, we have a supply chain crisis, of course. That will raise prices of certain things. You have, COVID that shut down a lot of manufacturing for chips. For example, computer chips that are used in a lot of different electronics, ranges of electronics like PlayStation 5s, Xboxes, cars, tablets, laptops, things like that, right? There are legitimate supply chain issues that do raise prices a little bit. And then, of course, you do have some government spending, shocks to the economy, externalities, whatever. But it turns out that even with all of that, that does not explain why inflation is so high. No, it's actually 60% of the price increases are a result of companies just raising their prices because they can. And that's it. Just because they can. Now, Stoller found that had corporate America kept the same average annual level of profits as they did in 2021, where again, they had been making record profits between the years of 2012 and 2019. Had they kept those same profits in 2021 without raising their prices, inflation would be 3.8%, not 6.8%. Again, still would have inflation, but look at that amount. Corporate greed. Now, there's more. You're not going to be surprised by this. Digital.com, a survey research firm, also went out and asked retail businesses about inflation. Here's what they said. 56% of them told Digital.com that inflation has given them the ability to raise prices beyond what's required to offset their higher costs. So they're saying, yeah, we have some higher costs, but over half of them said, we're just going to use the excuse and jack up the price even further. Those suckers are going to believe us too. Wow, supply chain, government spending, oh my God. Oh, I can't believe our prices, our costs for doing business are so high. I guess we're going to have to raise our prices by, in some cases, and you're just going to be furious about this one. That same survey found that these price hikes are concentrated among big retailers, with 63% of large firms using inflation to more than offset costs versus 52% of small and medium-sized businesses. But here's the thing. Of those who increase prices, 28% of the large enterprises increase prices by 50% or more, while small and medium-sized enterprises only did so by about 6%. So you almost had a third of these large corporations that decided, we're just going to lie and say, oh, can you do? Supply chain, government, blah, blah, blah. We're just going to have to raise our prices. And they did so by an additional 50%. And so, of course, that has huge impacts on the economy. With 6.8% inflation, any pay raises that people have gotten since the pandemic, well, they've been essentially nullified. So, for example, like $15 an hour, that hasn't been a living wage for a while. Even less so. Now it's going to have to be like $30 an hour if this level of inflation continues to stay, just to even out to being a living wage. And yet we have a federal minimum wage of $7.25. We have no labor union representation. We have no child care, no health care during a pandemic. What happened to the health care? What happened to the public option? What happened to all the people that said, oh, health care is a human right? No health care at all. And then, of course, you have bosses and customers that continue to treat them like shit. Gee, I wonder why workers don't want to come back to those jobs. I just don't understand. I don't get it. I'm a well-paid CEO. I'm the owner of a company. And honestly, I'm an independent contractor, which is almost the same thing, but I get it, but they don't understand it at all. And now here's the thing, these workers, by the way, you've heard the conservative, because whenever workers in these industries would complain about the wages, right, being too low, get a better job. Just get a better job. I mean, you don't like the wages there? Oh, go find a better job. Flipping burgers. Burger flippers. Oh, well, guess what? A lot of them did. They went and found better jobs. And now, the same people that told them get a better job are mad because nobody wants to make your burger. Nobody wants to deal with your bullshit and your poor tipping. Nobody wants to deal with the poor wages, lack of health care, benefits. Nobody wants to deal with that. And I don't blame them. And nobody should. It's almost like, I don't know, we need to make work dignified. You know, they always talk about the dignity of work, right? Oh, we got to get people back to the dignity of work. No, work itself should be dignified. By that, and you only get that by treating workers with dignity and paying them a wage they can live on. Benefits, and not denigrate them as, oh, you're just burger flippers, you're low skill workers, as Eric Adams called them, or errand boys and girls that just serve at the whims and the pleasure of their bosses that you can get rid of at any time. Now, you want to talk about the dignity of work? Well, then you better start making work a little bit more dignified, especially if you want people to work for you.